the season? Did you have
Tony, I wouldn't go into the specifics in terms of those meetings. I don't think it's not something I've ever done with players and everything like that. I understand the interest in the question, but I just don't think it's appropriate to share.
You optimism that you can turn things around this season?
Yeah,
Can you guys hear me?
have a number of really good people, in the organization, coaches, front office, players. We are looking forward to the opportunities that are in front of us, over the course of the spring, with both free agency, the draft, trade market, things of that nature. And, we're excited to continue building this thing and get it back on track.
You mentioned the cap. You expected to get a credit for Deshaun's contract. You were sure to get credit back to you for cap space.
I really do have a standard policy that I really don't talk about, contracts in public settings. So I understand the interest, but that's not something that I would address.
Can you give any details on how he needed another surgery?
Yeah, so obviously Deshaun, he re-injured his Achilles. Unfortunately he turned his foot ankle area that caused the re-tear during the normal stages of the recovery process. I know there's been a lot of speculation and everything out there, but there's nothing nefarious. It's just an unfortunate accident. So our focus is on making sure that he gets healthy and can be back to normal.
Do you have any further clear idea of the timetable?
Yeah, it's probably too early to pin that down with certainty. He will miss significant time. How far that spans into 2025, I can't give you a specific right now. He's shown to be a fast healer, and we're going to try and be as thoughtful and aggressive with the recovery process. But that's not something that I could predict at the current moment. Also, appreciate the hoodie.
How can you be sure there's a path forward when you have a guy who's so adamant that, hey, this is about what I want in terms of winning, not money, and how do you grow, I guess, past that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, actually, I think we're all frustrated with, not winning enough last year, and, certainly he shares in that sentiment. But at the end of the day, our decisions are about what's best for the Browns, and, what's best for the Browns is to have Miles on the roster.
What value did Mike bring to your team last season, and how did you speak to see him mature during his time?
Yeah, Mike's awesome. I think it starts with he has this infectious energy. He's a ball coach. He loves being on the grass. He loves being with players. He loves developing young coaches. I think the other thing that's very understated about Mike, you got to understand, Mike was a highly accomplished player at Ohio State, highly accomplished player in New England, coached big time football, great DC in Houston, and then a coach of the year in Tennessee. And despite all he's accomplished, he has the humility of a first-time QC coach in the league. And I think that that's something that's really endearing to the people that work with him. He can coach any position on the field, and he has more knowledge in his pinky finger than probably most people would in 20 years of football. And so New England's very, very, very fortunate to hire him, and I think he'll do a great job there.
You're listening to WKNR 850 ESPN Cleveland, a Good Karma brand station. This is Cleveland Browns Daily. Andrew Berry's press conference at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis.
The trade market at the top of the draft, it's yet to maybe reveal itself. We still are really early in the evaluation process on the college side. I think that's something that will perhaps have more visibility over the next several months as teams can get to know the prospects.
Andrew, and Tommy talked about decision-making being the number one trait he looks for in a quarterback. How, in settings like this, is it from interviews? What is it that how do you find
that part of it? Yeah.
Part of it?
That's a great question, Chris. I think it's twofold. I think, number one, there's a fair amount that you can tell from the film, like how are they going through their progressions. Okay, this is the concept, this is the coverage, this is where you think they should go with the ball. But probably the bigger piece, as you mentioned, Chris, is the idea of talking to them during these settings and during the spring and really seeing how they think. Whether you talk through a successful play or, honestly, a lot of times that are more helpful is like, okay, let's talk through an unsuccessful play and see what led to the decision and then ultimately what they learned from it. So this time, beginning in Indianapolis is incredibly valuable for that position for those very reasons. But it's something by the end of the process that we do believe that we'll have a really good feel for.
Joe Antonio has said he's not decided yet. How does that uncertainty affect you guys?
Zach, it's a good question. Joel is still deciding. We have really great dialogue, but we're prepared in both situations. That's a great question, Jory. I'll say number one, it's not an easy, evaluation. I think it first starts with, what you really want to accomplish on the offense side of the ball. Look, we'd all want the person who can do everything, but there are only so few of those players that exist. So at that point, based on your existing infrastructure and what you want to do schematically, it's about prioritizing some of the must-haves. Chris mentioned earlier, decision making. It's a big thing for for us at the Browns. So that's a must-have. Guys that have that characteristic at an acceptable level or higher, will be prioritized maybe relative to others. In some areas, it may be arm strength or anticipation or the ability to move. And what you're doing, you're weighing these different bundles of characteristics and then ultimately aiming at the ones that have the most of what you desire. Now, the added element or the added layer on top is availability and cost. And that's not something that we'll know for a couple weeks, but you do as much planning as you can because, free agency and the trade market, they generally take different twists and turns, or at least that has been our experience over the past 5 years.
Andrew, we have a
I'm sorry, Zach, I didn't hear you. Yeah, so I think there are two things that I really respect and appreciate, that Howie has always done. I think, number one, just the philosophy of quarterback in trenches. That's something that's enormous, and I think it's pretty enduring in our sport. And I think the second thing is, Philly's creativity in terms of pulling every lever in terms of how they build the roster, whether it's drafts, whether it's trades, whether it's free agency, and how they both use and manipulate their resources. That's what makes them the best right now.
Andrew, are you willing to trade the second pick of the way
Yeah, I think all those discussions are too early. I guess I'm open to anything that would help us, improve the team, but none of those decisions have been made. Here, let me go here because you haven't asked a question yet, have you? Okay. Okay, I'll do you next. I'll get you next.
We have a unique prospect, Travis Hunter, cornerback, wide receiver. How do you value that? That's a unique thing in the NFL now. And do you have a specific position you think is his primary position?
Well, I'd say this in terms of Travis Hunter, cornerback or receiver. The answer is yes. So he can play both, and I think that's what makes him special. We would see him as a receiver primarily first, but I think part of what makes him a bit of a unicorn is the fact that he can do both at a high level. Go, James.
How would you describe the stress or angst that accompanies not having a long-term answer?
So I always have this saying. Whenever I talk to people who are early in their careers, and it's a piece of advice that I wish I had learned earlier and taken earlier, and it's just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like there are things that are going to make you uncomfortable every offseason, especially when you're in essence, a risk-taking position, a risk-taking decision-making position. And that's like the reality of the beast. So, at this point in my career, that's not something that really gives me a ton of anxiety. I'll come back to you. Let me get someone and I'll come back to you.
There are opportunities every offseason. What do you identify so far this offseason to improve the roster and turn things around the next season?
Yeah, it's a great question, but that's one that probably can't answer in terms of specificity. Don't necessarily want to show our cards, but I think there are always opportunities in every avenue. Whether it's the 11 draft picks that we have, whether it's on the free agent market and guys that are become available, and then certainly the trade market with some opportunities that are already available and others that we won't know about for the next couple weeks. So our big thing is flexibility and being opportunistic, and that'll continue to be the case for us. Go ahead, Tony's next.
Shedeur and Dion made several references to the Browns, whether it's playing Madden or his first visit, building Musgrave being his favorite, whatever. What do you make of all that?
I don't make much of it Tony, just because it's a long way to go. But I will say this, we got a chance to spend some time with Shador at the East-West. We'll get some time to spend with him during the upcoming week. He's a fantastic individual. He's really smart, really driven. Grew up around football and was highly successful. So it's been a pleasure to spend time with him. We're looking forward to spending more over the next several weeks. But there's still a long way to go with everything, and so we'll work through that as appropriate. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the first part of your question. Yeah, so I'd say this. It goes, although Zach left, he asked this question and left, but it goes back to Zach's question in terms of, where we are philosophically similar to Philly is that we do believe in building through the trenches. So there won't be a year that we don't, do a ton of work on the big guys, including the edge rushers. Look, I think I heard the statistic yesterday that this year at the Combine there's a record number of defensive linemen that got invited, and that probably does tell you what you need to know about the class. That if you're looking for defensive linemen and you're looking for rushers, this is probably the right year to look.
Andrew, Dewan, second year in a row, obviously he ends up with in the season with an injury, but then he has another procedure on the knee. How much of a concern is that for, especially at the way he's carrying?
Yeah, so Chris, I'd say that the individual injury itself is. Let me knock on wood on this because this went the wrong way for us last year. But the injury individually of itself is not something that is creating a lot of anxiety. But what we do want to focus on is making sure that DeJuan can end the season healthy, because durability it's a huge part of it, and we're a better team when he's on the field and he's healthy. So that's a major focus of his offseason programming.
A couple more.
I'm sorry?
Why do you see Travis first?
I mean, honestly, Scott, I would say this: it's 6 one way, half dozen another. He can play both. I do think that there's just an element where his superpower, they're really his ball skills, and that's a position where you can use it 100 times during the season versus maybe 30 on the high end. But look, we'll have our coaches and scouts fight it out in terms of where he should be on the board. But any team he goes to will be happy to have him.
How much does job security factor into the front office decision-making process?
It doesn't at all. That's not something I spend any time on. I have too much respect and appreciation for everybody in the organization, and really make decisions accordingly.
Do you expect JOK?
Yeah, Tony, I wish I had a specific update for you on Jeremiah. I could say that he's slowly making progress. He's going through all that's required medically, but I don't have anything specific on that right now. I'm sorry? Yeah, he's tough, physical, a rare athlete with outstanding speed. He's special in his own regard that he can play off the ball, he can rush the passer. So he's an excellent prospect.
Last one here.
Andrew, could you see the team maybe changing quarterback plans to better suit Miles Nick's the better long-term option?
It'd be what I mentioned a little bit ago. Our job is ultimately to make the decisions that are best for the Browns organization. And oftentimes you want to make all of your players, your coaches, staff as happy as possible with their interests. But those interests always have to be aligned with what's best for the team, and that'll always be front and center in our decision-making process. All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, there you go. Andrew Berry live in Indianapolis as we kick off the NFL Scouting Combine in style with your general manager, Cleveland Browns, Merely Bo, the great Z. Here we are, buddy.
Here we are.
We're back,
in
baby.
Indianapolis. You and I both woke up in the great state of Ohio, made the trek.
Oh, baby.
Dodged the potholes. We've done it all. And yet, here we are, and we're getting ready to go. I think it's going to be a newsworthy week for the Cleveland Browns. I've already had an opportunity to catch up with some of my favorite people in the National Football League, which has been great.
Big L's.
And a couple of big L's will be joining us. Charles Davis, Greg Cosell. A lot of quarterback talk. And obviously the Browns, it's been years since we've come to this combine, and I mean that literally. And I think in the whole time that you and I have done this together, we have picked 2 first-round players.
Jed Wills.
Yep, and Greg Newsome.
But I don't know that, did we come that year?
We might not.
Because it was post-COVID. I don't think we came over here, did we? Was that hello, Gibbe?
Hi.
Gibbe's been here since last Tuesday.
We definitely came.
Darn right.
We were here in 20.
I feel like
I don't know if we were
I don't
in
know
21.
if we were here
We were
in
not
21. I don't think
it
it
was
like
virtual.
this. It was virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had
So
a
I think we've
virtual
only
combine.
had one, and it was the first year of Kevin and AB, and it was all
2020.
tackles. We knew we were doing tackles.
Yep.
Tackle
Yeah.
heavy draft.
And we were the 10th pick.
And we were the 10th pick, and that was it. So yeah, this is a different. It's a much different feel, obviously. When you, it's good. First of all, it's good to have a 1 again. That's fun.
Fantastic.
It's an incredible life raft, as we've said many, many times for the organization.
Yes.
The asset, and then also the possibility that the quarterback position would provide at that. And you just heard Andrew Berry talking. Look, AB is a master in talking in these settings, and here's the thing I think it's hard sometimes for fans to understand. There's no benefit for him divulging anything in these settings. So that's just the way that it goes, especially when it comes to our plans. He was very adamant about Miles. That was pretty clear. We're not trading. He's a Cleveland Brown. I think the exact quote I don't have, but I'm paraphrasing here, was something to the effect of, I see no scenario where Myles Garrett not being a Cleveland Brown is a good thing for us.
Yep.
So that is as straightforward as you can be on that side of it. And then there will be questions. I mean, you think about all of the business of the day for Andrew Berry. You have the Myles Garrett issue that's out there. You've got Deshaun Watson with a not 1 but 2 Achilles tears and 2 surgeries, and so that happens. So that's out there. So you get questions about that. You got a question about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You got a question about Joel Bitonio. You got a question about Nick Chubb. All the while, you have the number 2 pick in the draft. So that's a lot of business to get through in 15 minutes. And he'll be joining us here in a half hour.
It's
so
massive.
It's just a
when
lot
you
of stuff.
and if you would say a year ago at this time, the 5 most important players on the Cleveland Browns. So a year ago at this time,
post Chubb injury.
I would so even go back. So go 2
Do
years
that.
ago.
Yeah.
I want Nick Chubb to be part of it.
Me too.
Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Joel Bitonio, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah,
Deshaun Watson. at
Deshaun
that
Watson.
Point. Yeah.
So then you had Denzel that we would
Yeah.
Amari.
Yeah.
David Njoku. So of those 8,
Yeah.
Amari's already gone. Denzel is the only one that
There's no news.
is a sure thing.
Yeah,
to be back.
Yeah.
You don't know if Joel Bitonio is playing or not.
No.
Myles, I believe 100% will be a Cleveland Brown. It's been very resolute in that stance. We don't know if JOK. When you get answers that are that vague,
So vague.
it is. You have to take a somewhat of a bigger picture step and say, okay, we're not talking about not even he needs a year, he needs 2 years. We're not talking timelines. We're talking nothing.
Yeah.
So you wonder about his availability, not just to play the game, period.
Yeah.
So you have Joel Bitonio, somebody that you've counted on for years and years and years. He may be retiring. He may not. I hope not. I would think that if he were retiring, that decision has to come immediately, as we talked about yesterday, because you need to give this organization the best opportunity to plan for it. But that is incredible turnover, tumult, all of it.
Yeah.
So there is a lot going on, but the life raft that you have, and the one thing that can turn it around quicker than anything, is the quarterback position. And picking second, you have an opportunity to do that. I've talked to already a lot of people, and people whose opinions I respect greatly about the quarterbacks in this draft. And there are 2, and then there's everybody else. And now some people will say, quarterback 3 for me is Tyler Shuck. I've heard that. Some people like Dart. Some people, say I'd rather wait a little bit and try a Will Howard or a McCord. I've heard a lot of people talk about McCord. There are some people that are intrigued with the overall not skill set, but the talent of a Jalen Milroe, knowing that he has to refine himself as a passer. This position is, I think, everything for the Cleveland Browns franchise, and you're sitting here, and what I feel pretty good about as I sit here right now is from talking to people that everybody thinks that these two quarterbacks in the league can win. What the ceiling of those two is more of a matter of debate, I think, between the two quarterbacks. I think there is a majority of people who believe that Cam Ward has that highest ceiling. There are others, though, that I have talked to who think that Shador has the higher ceiling because of his instincts and the way that he plays the quarterback position. But the good news for the Cleveland Browns is they are in a position at the second pick to get one of them.
Yeah.
And I really think, as I talk to some people, and some are really strong on one and some are really strong on the other, if you're the Browns and you're really strong on one, get to number one. Andrew Berry was actually the de facto GM in 2016. Sashi Brown was the GM.
Yeah.
Andrew Berry was the de facto GM. I think his title was the Vice President of Player Personnel. But he was basically the head scout head on the football side. Sashi was the general manager, but was not a scout by trade.
Yep.
And in that draft, the Browns had the second pick. And in that draft, they did want a quarterback. And in that draft, there was a lot of consensus that there were two quarterbacks that were worthy of being taken up there. But for the Browns, it was one, and it was Jared Goff. And they saw the Rams give up a king's ransom to move up and get Jared Goff, who now has been, to a Super Bowl. He's been the number one seed on another team. Very productive career, and the Browns ended up not getting it. So I wonder if that experience, and we're going to get a chance to talk to him about things like this, has shaped the outlook on that. Many think it's a two-quarterback draft, but it could be a one-quarterback draft to some teams. And if we are a team that falls into that category, and I'm not saying that we are, I think we actually are. I've heard that I like both quarterbacks, but if we prefer one even 5% more than the other,
go in.
Just go get them. Like you give up a third. That's not even a 50% guaranteed good player.
No, and I think what the thing that you have to have is conviction. You have to have conviction and belief in what your guy is. You have you have been, this is a life raft that you get. You have a 3-14 season, and this is the positive that comes of it. But you have to get the guy that you want, and you are in the position to do so. And by picking at 2, if you have to go to 1, the give back is not going to be extreme to move one spot. We've heard all throughout already this morning that that the Titans have not been overwhelmed with offers at number 1. So you might be able to get it for a minimal cost, of which to me feels like a no-brainer. The quarterback conversation that you're having, I just think it's really important because hindsight is obviously perfect. And you think back to a year ago, you and I were sitting over there, and we were having these conversations, and we were out of the mix, right? But the conversation were being had here. And I'll tell you, right, and I've said this many times to the audience, you and I talk about it all the time, there was no consensus after Caleb. It was Caleb, huge drop, and then some like Drake, some like Jaden, but there was a mix. There was
like JJ?
Yeah, there was – JJ and Nix weren't even in the mix.
Penix wasn't in the
Penix wasn't in the – no. So, like, you're going to fall in love with your guy. This is a completely subjective process. It is in the eye of the beholder. And so if you're Andrew Berry and you're Kevin Stefanski, you have been at this probably already. You've been at this all last offseason. As soon as it became possible, you're picking number 2. You're lining up, okay, let's get some thought on these two guys. Who's worthy, who's not, who do we like more? But there's plenty of time to get a consensus, and there's plenty of time to make sure you get the guy you want.
Absolutely. And I think that, what you talked about there is, there hasn't been – it sounds like, and this is just early going, these are our early combine vibes, that the Titans are not taking a quarterback at 1.
Yeah.
That they are looking for, what Daniel Jeremiah would call a fairway ball, just to put something down the middle, not tie ourselves into anything, that could be more of a long-term thing, and just do that. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because the Titans are me.
The Titans just
they grab an iron. Just give me an iron.
Get me in the fairway.
Just give me a 6-iron. I just got to put it out there.
No,
I'm sick of chasing things in the woods. I just got to hit something down.
I'm grip and rip it, baby. I'm grip and rip it.
The Titans are me. That's exactly my game. Just give me an iron. I just got to hit it in the middle.
So that raises a lot of possibilities. Now they're looking, I think, to be overwhelmed, and so far I think they're just whelmed. Which, by the way, I don't know why that's not used more. Why can you be overwhelmed, underwhelmed, but why are you never just, I'm whelmed?
Is whelmed a word?
If you could be overwhelmed and underwhelmed, it implies that whelmed is something.
Whelmed would be a word. I've never heard it used in a sentence.
Me neither. I'm saying
It's
I don't
a great
think it
question
exists.
out of you.
What do you
It's a
think,
great
Tequila?
question out of you.
That you're
You
whelmed?
say whelmed? I'm perfectly whelmed.
Of course you do. That's why we love you. Yes.
Kev says a word, so whelmed is a word.
What
Why
the
is it
definition?
underused?
What's the definition of whelmed?
Why have people not? Has whelmed not been used? What do you got? You got a definition on it? All right, so it's essentially overwhelmed is redundant.
Yes.
You don't need the over.
You're just whelmed.
You're just whelmed.
Here's somebody. People
You
also
guys-
ask, why
can
can't
you
you
guys hear
be
me?
just whelmed?
Yeah, you're on live.
I'm
Fila, is this
perfectly whelmed.
By the way, this is a. I
What
just-
this
a
is a new
treat.
camera.
Right out of the
It's a
gates.
new camera. Tequila.
Are we doing
Fila
camera
camera.
changes to Fila?
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
we
just
are.
for
My
me.
gosh.
They set it up just for me. I requested it. I told Gibbs I want to be on the show, and this is what I get.
You look like you're going to perform a
Yeah,
set.
thank you.
By the way, just so you know,
Were you in Omaha last night? How was the crowd?
Oh, it was lovely.
2 shows or just 1?
3.
3 shows.
It killed. Terrific audience. Terrific audience. What year were you born, Fila?
1999.
Okay, well,
that's
in the
terrible.
year of your
That's
birth,
terrible.
the comedy 10 Things I Hate About You, the character Chastity Church asks, I know you can be underwhelmed and you can be overwhelmed, but why can't you ever be just whelmed?
Maybe.
So,
That's.
We're pulling from
I've-
great.
I love that movie. So yeah.
All right,
Maybe
so
that's what it
so
is.
Yep.
overwhelmed is redundant. Underwhelmed should have been the only addition.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like you're
underwhelmed.
content.
But it's not. By definition,
Is it
whelmed,
not?
whelmed means overwhelmed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Whelmed,
that's what it means.
submerged, you're being overrun.
Yeah, you're overrun. It
but
can't-
like if you're
somebody was
overwhelmed,
like,
you're
whelmed
double,
isn't enough. We gotta double it. Well, I'm already
Yeah.
submerged. How
Yeah.
much more whelmed do I need to be?
How much
I
more
think of-
whelming can I take?
I think of overwhelmed.
Underwater.
Overwhelmed having a lot of connotations, right? You can be overwhelmed for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons. To me, underwhelmed just means like I'm not impressed.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overwhelmed can be like
Yeah. There's a lot of for
can
sure.
apply to a lot of different
Absolutely.
emotions. I'm overwhelmed with love. I'm overwhelmed
Yeah.
with joy. I'm overwhelmed with sadness.
Sure.
I'm overwhelmed with work.
Many connotations.
But
yeah.
underwhelmed is basically just like,
Yeah.
who needs it?
yeah.
So right now, that's where the Titans.
Right now, the
apparently
Titans
are.
aren't
There you
even
go.
whelmed.
And what we want to do,
They're underwhelmed.
we want to be appropriately whelmed with a quarterback. And we have the opportunity to do that. So I think the question now is you come here, you know what the tape has shown you, you know what you know from your area scouts. Now you sit down in a room with them and you try to drill into who they are as people. I can tell you that we have heard a lot of great things about Shador.
Yeah.
I can tell you we have heard nothing but great things about Cam Ward's disposition, his leadership, his accountability, the dog in him.
Buddy, these
All of
two could not be more different as
Incarnate
players.
word, brother.
They could not be more different in terms of their roadmap to this point. I mean, you think about playing at Incarnate Word and then playing at Washington State and then putting your name in the draft, which is what Cam Ward did last year, and the NFL said, yeah, no. Then he goes and plays 1 year at Miami, and he's lights out. But he plays 1 year at Miami. Now he's going to go number 1 overall maybe. That all happened in a year. You think about that roadmap. Conversely, Shador Sanders.
Or number 2.
Or 2. Conversely, Shador Sanders has always been Deion Sanders' son. Always.
That's right.
He's always been a known commodity.
He has
he
fluctuated
also
in the
did,
rankings of his children at times.
He,
but
yeah,
typically
which
towards the
I
top.
steal that, actually. I steal that
I
often.
love that you do that.
But the other thing for Shador is Shador also, I mean, he really he could have played. He went to Jackson State to play for his dad. I mean, that is a massive gamble to do something like that. Now they brought Travis came too, and so they were there together and Prime and all of that. And then they went to the worst Power 5 job in America at the time they took the job. The worst. I mean, that was an outpost. They didn't even know where they were going to be in terms of what league they were going to be in. Didn't know what conference they were going to be in. Didn't know anything. And they went there, and they were the talk of college football 2 years ago, and then it fell off a cliff. And then this year they won 8 games.
Yes.
That's in with a complete roster turnover and behind his excellent play and Travis Hunter's sublime play. So the two paths for these guys, their makeup couldn't be more different. I guess this is the point I would make. You're going to like one more than the other. They're not similar players.
They're very
They
different.
don't have similar backgrounds.
Very different.
So there's one you'll like more than the other. That's just the way that it's going to go.
Your GM joins you next. He's en route.
There you go. From the great Gibby. We're off and running here. The Indianapolis NFL Scouting Combine. What a treat.
Oh, baby.
Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, back at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Cleveland Browns Daily, and joined by your general manager, Andrew Berry. Thank you so much, AB. It's great to see you, as always. The years go quick, don't they, buddy?
They really do. I thought I was just here with you guys last week. That's what it feels like. So.
You were. This is the first time that we've all reconvened here in Indy with a first-round pick since your first year as the general manager. Yeah, it's been that long. I mean, we had the Newsom pick, but that one was done virtually. So we have a one again. How does that change the week for you?
It really doesn't change the week that much, to be honest. I've always mentioned that we really go into the college process as if you have an expansion roster. Because, one, you never know what opportunities are going to present themselves on draft day. And then, secondly, you just never know if there are players that become available for trade or free agency later in their career. So for us, the process remains the same. Your scouts probably have a little bit more pep in their step, a little bit more excitement, just because we do hold the second overall pick, but the process remains similar.
When you think about coming here with the second pick in the draft, and you talk about, we look at it like we're an expansion team. Well, the number one thing an expansion team would want is a quarterback, I would imagine. You have an opportunity in this draft to do that. You've gone through some kind of quarterback search drafts. I'd go all the way back to 2016, which maybe has some parallels. Tennessee had the number one pick.
Yeah.
We had number two. Somebody traded up to one. That changed kind of maybe the way that we approached that draft. What have you kind of learned from 16, 2017, and even beyond, kind of when you're thinking more quarterback-centric in a draft?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just make sure you get to know these guys as well as possible. And then based on your evaluation of them as people and players, that's when really the strategic decisions come. And so, I think a big thing for us is, like, we're not going to necessarily rush the process. It's a major decision when you're picking two. It's a major decision every year, but particularly a major decision when you're picking as high as we are this year. And so we're not going to rush the process. We're going to get to know not just the quarterbacks, but all the top prospects that would come into consideration that early for us, and then make our strategic decisions after that point.
AB, when you've been at the game as long as you have now, you're going to have hits or misses in the draft, right? There's no sure things. It's all subjective. What, if any, changes to your guys' process have you made over the years? What have you learned from the process?
Yeah, actually, I'd say one of our biggest learnings is we probably over-index on some players who were productive in college, but probably didn't have the physical characteristics that would allow their production to scale at the NFL level. It's a little bit like if you think about baseball. Let's say you take that AAA pitcher who strikes out 10 guys per 9 innings, really good command, good off-speed stuff, but has a 91-mile-an-hour fastball with little life. Probably not going to scale to the big leagues. And we've had a couple misses there where we've had good productive players who fit our schemes in terms of skill set. But whether their physical tools weren't good enough, or when they suffered a major injury or got a little bit older in their career and they took a step back from a physical standpoint, they didn't have the compensating factors to maintain their level of production.
That's interesting.
When you look at the top of the draft, and you mentioned quarterbacks and also some of the best players, so I want to kind of go through some of the positions and just what are the traits that you're looking for? We'll start with quarterback, obviously. What are the traits that you're looking for, and how do you as a scout combine that with, or the general manager, combine that with what a coach is looking for and get kind of that holistic picture?
So I'd say this. Let me maybe zoom out a little bit, Nate. When you're picking at the top of the draft, you want to find unique players. And you want to find players that can impact the game. While also realizing that each draft class is different. Like, I'm not a huge believer in comparing draft class to draft class to draft class, because those set of players are different and you're not making decisions on them. I think the second thing is usually the top of the draft is young players or age combined with, some level of early production, and then the physical characteristics that would allow them to get into the rotation or getting into a starting position early to then get NFL experience. Those are usually the guys that get picked high, with some exceptions. So those are some of the profiles that we would be looking for, and that's, like, let's say, position agnostic. When it comes to matching a player to scheme, I'd say this: when you're picking high and you're looking for unique players, it really goes the other way around, because there are only a handful of players that are true difference makers in the sport. And they really should transcend scheme for your organization.
So at the top, just when it comes to if you give it a mix of that versus physical traits versus fit, and obviously at quarterback, that's a big part of it. And I'm not trying to get you into that spot necessarily, but what percentage of these traits will make work versus these traits work with what we do?
Yeah, I don't think there's a hard and fast
There
rule.
isn't.
And the reality of it is, like, first and foremost, you want to get unique and impactful players. If you have unique and impactful players, you have smart coaches, and it may be a little bit different than they've been accustomed to. They'll adjust. I mentioned up at the podium this example, like Lamar Jackson, for instance. I know he didn't necessarily go at the top of the draft, but he had some rare and unique characteristics. And when Baltimore selected them, they were running a completely different scheme. And when they inserted him to the lineup, I think they were 4 and 5 at the time. They shifted, right? They shifted mid-season, went on a run, get to the playoffs, and then the following year they totally revamped their offense. And they did it because he was unique and he could impact the game in a rare and special way. And that's one of the many reasons that that John Harbaugh is an excellent coach. And our coach is not too shabby either. So we'll prioritize impact and make the necessary adjustments if that comes to play.
I'm sure there's a weighted system positionally too, right? So that special trait at its position that matters most, and you have those kind of charted as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to sit here and say that positional value doesn't matter, but I always say, like, our first order of business is get difference-making players and guys who can impact the game. I think it can be easy to get maybe a little bit too cute with that stuff, especially when you're picking high, because again, there are only so many blue chip players. The fit schematic thing, that probably becomes more of an issue as you get with players that have more flaws as you get deeper into the draft, or maybe you're shopping economically in the UFA market or the trade market. Then that becomes a little bit more important. But the first order is finding players who can uniquely impact the game.
If there was one player in your mind in this draft that you said this person must be a Cleveland Brown, is that something you guys consider going 2-1, thinking back to 2016 when you were at 2 and maybe you liked who went 1?
I generally say this, Nathan. I think I've never had a draft in my career where it's a one-player draft, and I think this year, no different than past years, there are several players that will help their organizations when they get picked. Certainly there are more than 2, and there's certainly more than 1. So we'll work through it over the next couple of weeks, but I think we'll have a good pool of players to select from.
What part of the combine is also gathering intel, right, and trying to read the tea leaves on what is actually happening in front of you, which is a very small line that you need to find out about, and then, well, what are the people behind me thinking that maybe want to get in front of me?
So intel gathering is important, but honestly, you probably get more with the veteran trade market than you do maybe the top of the draft. I know there have been some years, the year that Carolina moved up to take Bryce Young, and some of these that occurred near the combine. But I'd say that's probably more the exception rather than the rule. I think oftentimes what gets lost is, like, it still is very early in the process.
Sure.
And we're not drafting for another 2 months. So I'd say there's less intel gathering around the draft at this time, and probably more in terms of the veteran trade market.
What's your favorite veteran trade market combine story? Was it last year, right? Did Jerry Jeudy kind of emerge from this?
No, he did, but that probably wouldn't be my favorite.
Okay, all right. Let me get comfortable here.
It was actually probably, to me, the ones that are the most interesting are the ones that you just don't see coming. They're kind of a little bit, for lack of a better term, out of left field. And that was a little bit Zadarius Smith, for us. And I know, like, it's like, wait, well, that trade happened in May. Like, what are you talking about? How's that a combine story? But that was the first time I got wind that, like, he may actually be available. And we worked on that deal for months. At different times, it was like a stop, a start. Okay, this isn't going to happen. We don't think this is going to happen. Oh, maybe this will happen. So that's probably the one because, candidly, he wasn't necessarily thought of to be in our planning because he had such a great year.
Yep.
And then when he came available and we were able to work through it with Minnesota, it was something that I'll certainly remember.
Well, we've positioned ourselves right next to them again in case you want to.
There you go.
In case you want to strike up any conversations, we strategically there.
Yeah.
Is it a reunion too?
I mean, you guys are in foxholes in your own facilities, in your own towns, and all of a sudden the whole league comes here, and you see all these people you've intersected with throughout your career.
So I was actually just telling Kevin early this morning because, usually Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning, that's when you do all your league subcommittee meetings. And so from 9 to noon, it was a general manager's advisory committee, coaches subcommittee, and future football committee all in the room. And after we finished, and Kevin's on the coaches, I'm on the general manager advisory committee, I was telling him, I was like, you know what? I was like, one thing that I like about this is like, you get to be in a room like in a non-competitive setting. You realize just like how many good people are in the league and how many people you enjoy spending time with and respect. So it is something that's a nice, I guess, side effect of the combine. Although you get very few of those moments during the week because it's a sprint.
We, it's funny. Like from a fan perspective, you say it's the combine. We're going to figure out who we're going to pick. And you just said in the answer to Nathan, we're 2 months from the draft. So
with free agency
to go. So from the fan to understand like the process part of it, how far along in the draft process are you in terms of getting your opinions on the players, and then what work still is the most important work still to be done?
Yeah, so a lot of the film evaluation, from your scouts is complete. Your coaches are largely still just getting into it. And generally you'll have your players either tiered or call it like with the preliminary board. Throughout the combine and the months of March and April, you'll do more in terms of sequencing, whether it's within a position group or cross position groups. But then all the other stuff, how are they medically? How are they mentally? Anything that you have to dig in terms of background. How do they best learn? And then really answering maybe gaps in terms of their physical characteristics. That's what the spring is really used for. And ultimately seeing how they fit within your organization, your specific organization.
Yeah. Where do you feel like we are with the cap? And I know it's something that we've been able to not necessarily manipulate, but it can be malleable. We heard there's a big jump going on, but we also in the last few days, we've seen, Charlie has been released. We've seen, Juan Thornhill, or reports of that, and then we've seen, obviously, the comments I guess you made before you came to us that perhaps Nick Chubb will hit the market. How are we in a position like that, and what more can fans expect in terms of retaining some of our own versus, going and being active in the free agent market?
Yeah, so I think that we are in a year where we do want to transition a little bit, and we're going to take a little bit of a strategic approach in the sense that we will create roster spots for role expansion with some of our young guys internally that we think are ready to step up, and then the 11 for now, which could be more, could be less, that we'll bring onto the roster in April. And some of doing that is creating the opportunities for competition, but that's really regardless of any salary cap considerations. That's something that, like I said, we manage on a multi-year time horizon. That's not anything that'll be necessarily restrictive, but anything that we do in the veteran market, it's got to be consistent with our goals. And look, we've never been shy to take a shot at an opportunity.
No doubt.
But even if you look at some of the veterans that we've signed, we've never actually really been super active at the top of the market. I think Jack and Dalvin were actually like our two most expensive additions through that. We've probably seen more of like our sizable financial acquisitions through trade.
Yep.
So it's something that we're going to be selective about. Make sure that we're getting the right guy and the right strategic fit. But a big part of it is making space for these 11 draft picks and some of the guys that we think are ready for bigger roles moving forward.
So you said earlier definitively, and it's been your position all along, not trading Miles. People call not interested in that. Are you getting that on the other end if you call about a receiver? Are they like, yeah, we're not trading receivers to you anymore because whatever. The Amari trade worked out too well for you. Jerry Jeudy certainly seems to be working out well. No, that's a hard no.
I think, people know we're always active in the trade market in terms of any way that we can improve the team, and I appreciate other teams and other clubs that have a similar approach.
AB, we talked a little bit about we're waiting on Joel. JOK is out there as well. Obviously, there will be a timeline for you all with that. Do you know kind of where that is, or do you have parallel planes that you're kind of planning out for in terms of what that would look like?
You always prepare for contingencies, because there hasn't been an off season or a year that you go into here and like know, hey, it's going to be this, 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 and this. It's like you live in parallel universes as a GM, and I don't think that it matters where you are in your roster's life cycle, but it's the reality of the position. But that's also what allows you to be flexible and opportunistic.
Yeah. So you mentioned some transition. Where is this roster in your mind in terms of being able to really compete and get back to where we were 2 years ago, right? Go to the playoffs, win 11 games. Is it a few minor tweaks? Is it a few things? Where do you when you say transition, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it's what I talked about earlier in terms of, creating some opportunity for some of the younger players.
Guys like Isaiah McGuire have stepped up.
And Nate, I would say that, like, I'm not really necessarily in the prediction business in terms of that comes. Like, want to focus on having the right process in place. Because ultimately what our goal is, we want to compete year in, year out for divisions, championships, and Super Bowls. So we're going to make the moves that allow us to do that. Look, it's February right now, so we've got 7 months till we play. So who knows what the roster's going to look like by the time that we get there.
AB, great seeing you, buddy.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Enjoy.
Andrew Berry, General Manager, Cleveland Browns. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland, broadcasting live at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We just had Andrew Berry here joining us in our studio. The fellas did a great job. Fellas and ladies did a great job.
Everybody.
So we're all set up. Great group.
What a
great group
performance.
effort. And right out of the gates, you get AB at the podium, and then you get AB here with us. Look, this is the job for him in this hour of media is to be available and answer questions, but not tip his hand on what he is thinking at number 2. But I do think there were some illuminating comments that he had with us, including, some of the things they learned in the process, some of the ways that you asked. We had the question about the salary cap and what that looks like, and we're always in a way where that's malleable and something we can work with. But at the same time, some of these young guys, you brought up Isaiah McGuire, guys who we have drafted, who have flashed, it's now time for them to elevate as well. And so a little bit of a transitional phase in the roster.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think that part of it is, you are wanting to be a team that can compete. We're basically 2 seasons, I guess you would say, removed from the playoffs, but really 1 year. The year prior, you were a playoff football team. I hated to see, Charlie go. Love Charlie Hewlett. Have the utmost respect for him as a player, as a professional, as a guy, just around the organization, a great representative of the Cleveland Browns. But, he got hurt last year. Rex Sunahara came in and played well. And so you'd say, while we are not salary cap strapped per se, everywhere you can save is helpful. And so now you're saying, okay, we think Rex Sunahara, maybe he's not 100% of Charlie Hewlett, but for less money, he's close enough. And so that's why you see a tough decision like that. Jerome Ford ran very well, had one of the highest breakaway percentages in the league. It's a loaded running back draft, and now we kind of hear, and I remember when he spoke at the podium earlier this offseason, the way he talked about Nick Chubb, it kind of raised my eyebrows, like maybe Nick Chubb might not be coming back, and now they're saying that he's going to test free agency. That's it from Andrew Berry, which Nick Chubb in many ways is one of those kind of heart and soul, iconic Cleveland Browns. I know that his period of complete greatness was 4 years, cut short, obviously, by that injury. But, that says a period of transition. But Jerome Ford did well, and I mentioned there are going to be plenty of running back options in this draft. It would not surprise me at all if this team does take a running back in this draft. Juan Thornhill was not able to, through injury and a variety of factors, as we talked about, capture the level at which he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. But Ronnie Hickman has always played well back there. And so now you've got a guy on an undrafted free agent contract that you can feel pretty comfortable, I think, starting at free safety. Was your starting free safety down the stretch last year when you went to the playoffs, in fact, had the pick 6 in the game against the Jets. Isaiah McGuire and, returning Alex Wright. You feel good kind of what you have there opposite Myles Garrett. You're going to get more out of Mike Hall. You have a big question mark now with this JOK situation, but on one level, we're not that far away, but on another level, we are, and the level in which we are is it's the quarterback, and that is the great panacea.
Yeah.
If you have that. Now, we've seen Adam Schefter was just reposted this himself, and many others did. He said the one thing that he is the most sure about, or that he feels the most sure about in this draft, is that the Browns are taking a quarterback at number 2. Great.
Fantastic.
Music to my ears. Maybe he's been asking for that. Maybe he's been listening to Browns Daily
for a month and a half.
But this is kind of where we are, and I tried to follow up on that comment, because our fans who are watching this show and who are so invested in this football team, and the best fans of professional sports, in my opinion, they're down right now. Yeah. And I think that, you think from a fan standpoint, and from even, take a Miles standpoint, he wants to win. Transition has maybe a negative connotation when you hear that. When you say we're going into a transition phase, it sounds like, okay, we have to move out of this era into a new era. But transitions can also be very, very good. And really, the key to making a transition period good or bad is having the quarterback. If you have him, it's going to be a great transition period. You don't, it's not. And so I think it's interesting. I thought that, he is looking for, traits, unique traits that move the needle. You mentioned that there's obviously the natural positional hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Andrew Berry has been through this. He's been through this in 2016 where, in my recollection of the situation, the Browns were all in on Jared Goff. They picked second. Tennessee wasn't taking a quarterback, but then somebody jumped them. 2017, you had Miles number 1, but it's also the Patrick Mahomes draft. Yeah. It's also, and this is kind of one of those great what-ifs, the Browns could have drafted Miles, not traded out, taken Deshaun Watson, maybe that follows a completely different path.
Oh, yeah.
In the
For
same
sure.
draft.
In
but
the same
didn't,
draft.
You
Yeah.
didn't take the quarterback. So
No.
it is an interesting time. I think it is a high-pressure time. I think it is probably a very stressful time because you got to get this right.
It's when you just go through the checklist, I mean, just go to his availability and then the conversation we just had with him, and you think about it starts with Miles. So that's the first 10 questions over there was Miles. Then it's how do you view the quarterbacks?
Yep.
Right? So you're picking number 2. Then it's your current quarterback at a second Achilles. So that's, I mean, not Dr. Boos, but it's a year. I mean, that's minimum, right? So that, you've got JOK and the uncertainty there. You got Joel Bitonio and the uncertainty there. And
now Nick Chubb.
And now Nick Chubb.
And
which
the uncertainty
came
there.
in a different session, and the uncertainty there. So
and I think
that's a big – we were talking yesterday, you and I were doing like when you build a house, you do an addition, you talk about a punch list. That's a big punch list.
Well, and if you were to think about it, and this isn't necessarily the right graphic, but if the Browns had kind of 4 pillars, right, it was, Nick Chubb and Joel Bitonio and a great offensive line and run game. Miles, you talk about Myles Garrett. You made the big home runs try at the quarterback position. Yep. And then you got, on defense, a guy, JOK, had become a game wrecker.
Yeah.
And those were, in some ways, kind of some of the cornerstones because what JOK was able to do in Jim Schwartz's defense is a big reason why you were the number 1 defense. So is Miles, by the way. The quarterback, this is probably the linchpin of everything. But this, and I'm linking them together just because we don't know the outcomes here, but Joel Bitonio and Nick Chubb and what they were able to do in that wide zone scheme. And, of course, there's Wyatt Teller and there's Ethan Posick and there's Jack Conklin, and it's a full line. But in terms of prior to the Nick Chubb injury, 2 things that you could count on from the Cleveland Browns were Joel Bitonio playing at a Pro Bowl All-Pro level and Nick Chubb playing at a Pro Bowl All-Pro level. Mm-hmm. And you got to the point now where you could count on JOK. He did it once, but it was well on his way again to doing something. What he did in 2023 had only been done by 3 off-ball linebackers since 2010, and they were Luke Kuechly, Levante David, and him. And he was on pace to do it a second time through 8 games last year. So you're talking about another all-pro Pro Bowler that you can count on.
Yes. Pillars.
So 3 of those are in huge question mark, JOK, Bitonio, and Nick Chubb, will they play for the Browns? Miles, I think, will get worked out. I'm not worried about that. And then you have this one that really is the straw that stirs the entire drink, which is the quarterback position. And you've been thrown a life raft, as we've said over and over, here with the opportunity at pick 2 to get one. And I think that, you need to really go through and understand internally, where do we have these 2? Do we really think we can win both? Because I thought you asked a great question, and we were kind of both trying to get at it, but with that position in particular, and I asked how involved would a coach be?
Yeah.
Because is it scheme, is it talent? Now, you're saying at the top of the draft it shouldn't be. I think that there's a pretty good consensus around everybody that maybe Cam is a more talented ball of clay per se, but that Shador is a more instinctive, best pure passer in this draft.
Yeah, I guess what you and I were both trying to get at there is if the ceiling is higher consensus on Cam, and we don't know how our guys think about it, but if the ceiling is higher on Cam, the physical attributes, all of those things are higher. But if Shador is more of a plug-and-play fit for what Kevin wants to do and has those traits, how do you weigh those things? And he answered it using the Lamar parallel, where Lamar was – and I remember you talk about it at the time, like one of the most – like John Harbaugh was dead man walking. He didn't even have a contract for the next year. And they flipped, and then they flipped big and went all in with Lamar. But he was at the end of his contract, and they saw that they had something special in Lamar in a way that you go. And so he used that as the example of talent trumps all. So I suppose if you can glean anything from that, it would be that's how they would view number 2.
And I think that is a fair way to view it. What's incredible about this, and kind of in the retrospect in history is 2020 and things, people, I think, were of the notion that Lamar didn't really throw the ball well
I
in
know.
college.
I remember this well, yeah.
He threw 57 touchdown passes in his last 2 years there at Louisville. He was the Heisman Trophy winner as a sophomore?
Sophomore, yeah.
Yeah, and then came in third because they don't like to give it back to back. Meanwhile, he
had a better year.
He ran for 39 touchdowns and threw for 57 in his final 2 seasons. I mean, think about those numbers. That's my math. What'd I say? 57 and 39?
Yeah.
That's 96 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he was responsible for.
Yep.
So the notion that, like, when he came out, what's funny, and I was going to ask him, but then it really doesn't matter, but if Lamar Jackson, the prospect, the same as he was then, was coming out in this draft, he wouldn't get out of the top 5. There's just because the position's so important.
Different.
It's just totally different. But that was 2018, not that long ago.
No, we view
so
it differently.
You do, and justifiably so.
Real quick, you're listening to WKNR 850 ESPN Cleveland, Good Karma brand station.
And then you go back to what you were talking about with Lamar, and I think people forget that first year Lamar comes in, they really don't even throw the ball.
No.
He started 7 games and threw 170 passes. He appeared in more than that. But we're talking, there were games where they throw it 10, 15 times.
He was a single wing.
Single wing.
Times.
And then you remember in the playoffs, because they ended up going to the playoffs, they get beat by the Chargers, who played the big dime. They had Derwin James down there that played 3 safeties. You're like, oh, everybody's got the book out of him. And then he comes out the next year, and they change some things around, and he leads the league with 36 passing touchdowns, including, I want to say, in the season opener that year, I think he threw like 5.
I remember that from fantasy purposes.
Against
it was like,
Miami?
Oh my God.
Yes,
This
against the
guy's
Miami
unbelievable.
Dolphins. They had 643 yards of offense in that game. He threw for 5 touchdowns, and I want to say didn't throw 17 of 20 for 324 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he ran for 6 yards in that game.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, you want to see us throw the ball? We'll show you how we can throw the ball. So the notion that they evolved with him, and now they've evolved even more fully with Monk in there. And, now he throws for 4,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 picks, runs for 900 yards, not even the MVP.
Right.
Because they've given it to him twice, much like Dwight didn't get the Heisman the second time.
Yeah.
But he's a different even kind of prospect. There's no way he goes 32nd in a draft this year.
No.
And that's why when people are talking about Milroe's not like Lamar Jackson.
He's not like Lamar Jackson, no.
He's not even like Jalen Hurts,
No.
who went to quarterback finishing school
He's
with Lincoln
not
Riley.
He's not in the same vicinity of Justin Fields or
No.
not in that league. No,
So-
not at all.
It is interesting right there. You have the talent, but I do think that's you ultimately, if you believe in your coaches, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is good to hear him say that as you and I talk about, because we both have been like, it's easier right now to visualize Shador running our offense.
No doubt.
Or running Kyle's offense, or running Kevin O'Connell's offense.
Pat Shermer was his coordinator. Like,
and by the way,
they
says
ran an NFL
anybody who
system.
thinks that he can't make all
Yeah.
the throws is out of their their
come on.
gourds.
Come on.
But if you do think that Cam is the bigger ball of clay, and you've got Kevin Stefanski, and you've got Tommy Reese and Bill Musgrave, if that's how you evaluate it, then get him.
Yeah.
Then
Go
get
get
him.
him.
Then get him. But I think I love to see that Adam Schefter says their top pick's going to be a quarterback. And here's the thing to me, and he didn't really – you're not going to tip your hand, obviously,
No.
but didn't really even address it. He kind of just said there isn't a one-player draft. Well, there are one-player drafts.
There are, yeah. Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning was a one-player draft.
Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
Even I would say the Trevor Lawrence draft.
Trevor
that was
Lawrence
a
draft was
one-player
a
draft.
One-player draft, yeah. Yeah.
And the ironic thing is, many people would have said last year that it's Caleb Williams is the one-player draft.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they would have been, obviously wrong. And so I appreciate both sides of that. But if it's one player for you at the most important position, then you make sure you do whatever you have to do to make sure you get that player.
You go get that guy. If a car, truck, or motorcycle accident caused you injury, call the injury lawyers at 1-800-ELK Ohio for a free case review. Elk & Elk's proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Morgan Wallen is bringing his I'm the Problem tour to Huntington Bank Field. It's August 15th and 16th. Country sensations Miranda Lambert, Thomas Rhett, Ella Langley join. Tickets on sale now at huntingtonbankfield.com/Morgan Wallen. Don't miss out on this must-see summer show. And we are broadcasting live at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports NFL Draft Analyst, joining us here. We just had our General Manager Andrew Berry. He was kind of center stage here for an hour with the availability, and then here with us on the show. Ryan, let's just start big picture with this draft in terms of the talent that's in it. Andrew said, I need elite. We're looking for elite difference makers. How many of those are there?
At number 2, there are a ton.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter is probably the best player in this draft class that's not a quarterback. He's the best player. Teams need quarterbacks. Cleveland could certainly be one of those teams. Abdul Carter, I'm sure you guys have talked a ton about him as a possibility at number 2, especially if Myles Garrett ends up not being in Cleveland next year. Offensive tackle is not quite as deep, especially at the top, but it's defense frequently. Yeah. Edge rush, defensive line. There are going to be some cornerbacks in this class. If you need a running back, and we'll see what happens with Nick Chubb and the depth there, you can get guys all the way through day 3. So everything but quarterback is pretty much on the table. And I know obviously the Browns have some things to figure out at 2 and what they want to do there. I feel like a lot of these teams wish they could get a time machine, go back to last year's draft class for the quarterbacks. Yeah. But, it's going to be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, and they're going to have to figure out how high those guys end up going.
When you look at Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, what do you like about Cam? What do you like about Shedeur?
So Cam Ward is he's my QB1. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit faster, a little bit more athletic, a little bigger arms than Shedeur. So literally every box you check. And he's gotten better each and every year. Played at Incarnate Word, went to Washington State, made improvements there. And when you talk to scouts over the summer, coming out of Washington State, he was probably a day 3 guy. And he made a huge leap this year. Now, the lack of depth at the quarterback position probably helped push him up. But he dragged that Miami team to a lot of wins, which otherwise they would not have had. The concern with both Cam and Shedeur is the same concern I had with Caleb last year, in that they play a lot of hero ball because they sort of have to. The offensive line in Colorado was a mess, and when you start playing outside of structure, it's fun for college. It doesn't really translate to the NFL. It took Caleb what felt like 2.5 months to figure that out, and finally things started to come together for him towards the end of his rookie season. In terms of Shedeur, I liken him physically, not necessarily as a player, but physically to Joe Burrow when Joe Burrow transferred from Ohio State to LSU. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to Joe Burrow just over here 4 or 5 years ago when he came out, and I said, when did it finally click for you to do the things you were able to do your final year at LSU? And he said, mentally I could always do those things. Physically my body had to grow into what I wanted to do. We'll see if Shedeur is going to do that, but I think physically he's not the athlete that Cam is. He doesn't have the arm that Cam does. And then you're sort of dealing at the margins when you're a team trying to figure out how this quarterback fits, because he can't make the throws that Cam can make, or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or whomever. So you're going to have to tailor the offense to sort of exploit what Shedeur does well. Now, I don't know if there's a tougher person in college football than Shedeur Sanders, and I talked to a ton of his teammates during the All-Star games, and they said to a person, every time he got hit in the mouth, he didn't point fingers, he got back up, got in the huddle, called the play, and went on to make the next play. And I appreciate that about him. But I do wonder, and part of me is a little concerned, that all the sort of Sanders hype around him is going to affect how we view him, at least media-wise. And sometimes that seeps into how the teams, when they interact with these players, how they end up judging these guys ultimately.
When you judge quarterbacks, and because you hit on it, these circumstances are so different. And one of the things, Nathan, when you did the deep dive on Shedeur, was like you never saw a single time when he pointed like or went like this on the protection. The protection was awful. It was awful.
Killed.
And they had no run game. I mean, none. Didn't even attempt to run it. It was like a kid playing the video game, honestly. Like, we're going to throw it 50 times, and we'll throw it to Trav a lot, and that's the way it's going to go. What are you looking for as you're analyzing quarterbacks specifically? How do you weigh like how they are when it all goes well versus off schedule? How do you weigh all of that when you're because look, there isn't. We were here last year. We talked to a bunch of people. I can't remember if we had you on or not. We talked to a bunch of scouts. It felt like Caleb, and then a big drop for Jaden and Drake, and then who knows after that. So, and then all of a sudden now we get there and it's like, well, they're all really good, maybe potentially, maybe Penix too. So how do you kind of try to find your truth at quarterback?
Yeah, Bo, I'm smiling because I've been covering the draft since 2019 for CBS, and what I come away with is like, we don't know. Like we don't know.
Right.
To your point about Jaden Daniels and even Bo Nix, hey, guess what, guys? Fit matters. And if you go to a situation, Washington's situation 12 months ago was a disaster, and they were starting to make the changes, but they nailed the draft even after Jaden Daniels. Sean Payton, it turns out, knows what he's doing with young quarterbacks, and Bo Nix was the exact right player they need. Is Bo Nix Jaden Daniels? No, but he does a lot of what Sean wants him to do, and I think that's incredibly important because you're going to have a ton of failure as a quarterback, as a rookie in the NFL, and it's a matter of how you deal with that mentally. We were talking to Brian Callahan earlier today, the second-year coach for the Titans, and he talked about how he was in Cincinnati when they drafted Joe Burrow, how mentally tough you have to be to play that position because you guys see it. You've gone through a slew of quarterbacks because of injury and otherwise, and you can tell when a guy's body language isn't where it needs to be. And to your point, Nathan, about Shador, never seen him point. And I think if his name was Sam Johnson, we wouldn't worry about any of the other stuff that we talk about, and I get why we talk about it. But I think more than the physical stuff, and I don't want to bag on this young man, but I bring him up as an example. You build Will Levis in a lab for quarterbacks, but you could see the frustration and sometimes the body language work against him last year, especially when he ended up getting benched. And that's what you have to figure out. And the teams haven't figured it out yet. I certainly haven't figured it out, and that's the toughest part.
When you are evaluating quarterbacks, because I would, in my assessment of them, I think Cam has more talent, more upside for what we ask a quarterback to do and what I would say a McVay or a Shanahan or even a Kevin O'Connell.
Right.
I like Shador's decision-making, his accuracy, his toughness to stay in the pocket, that if it's in structure and you can maybe get some of those habits that he developed because he was behind such a bad offensive line out of him, that you have somebody who can be a real kind of a sniper assassin in that style of an offense. So I think both of them have an opportunity to win. When you look, what are the traits that you look for the most? Because, when you talked about the box with Cam, those were all physical. But as we know, the game is not played at that position physically alone. Right. You have to have not only the ability to decipher and process information quickly, know where to go with the ball, but then the ability to deliver it on time accurately and have that kind of anticipation, that almost instinct that is not really a tangible thing, but it becomes tangible on tape.
Absolutely, and I think mentally physical tools have to be there, but after that, and 1A, maybe even 1 comma, is the mental toughness to overcome. It's sort of like what we talk about with cornerbacks, where you have to have a short-term memory. You can't keep making the same mistake over again, but you have to learn from those mistakes quickly. The processing is incredibly important. And the thing with Cam that I love, and almost to a fault, again, Will Levis, frenetic comes to mind when you think about Will. He's always tight and moving around, sort of jittery. Cam is the exact opposite.
Nonchalant.
He is as laissez-faire as they come. It's almost
I
like,
wrote that in my notes, a billion. I'm like, nonchalant, just nonchalant.
Like he's sitting in a rocking chair playing Madden.
Yep.
And you're like, all right, speed it up. But he always seems to get the ball out on time. His subtle pocket movement is pretty good. Like he has a sense for players around him. He still has to get the ball out on time more. But the development I saw over the course of his career is encouraging. It feels like in the interviews that I've seen, we haven't talked to him yet, he's not going to take anything from anyone.
No.
And he's talked to people at Washington State and at Miami both, said he's an incredible, quiet confidence leader. So he's not a rah-rah guy, and he doesn't necessarily have to be, but all the things point to him being able to have success.
How do you evaluate a guy? Because what struck me with Cam was unbelievable talented, can throw it literally to anywhere on the field from basically any base, any arm angle.
Exactly.
And will sometimes put himself in strange bases for really no reason. It's just kind of that nonchalant thing. You could, in my mind, I wrote one of the things I wrote down. You could tell he's a fan of Mahomes and like Lamar Jackson because he does a lot of things mannerism-wise that are similar to them. But one thing that drives NFL coaches crazy, and we've certainly dealt with it at times with the Browns, when you won't take the layups. Like in the NFL, it is so hard to even scheme up somebody open for 7 yards that when it's there, you have to take it. And Cam, part of the hero ball, which to me was a little bit different than Shador, was that sometimes he'd have perfectly good protection. He'd have somebody open for 12 yards. He'd look at him and be like, that kind of bores me.
Yep.
I'm going to drift, and I'm going to throw a 30 or 40-yarder. Is that something that how do you kind of evaluate that evolution into the NFL? Because it's going to have to be something that's coached out of him and that he's willing to at times do. And now some coaches may say, you know what, I'll live with you missing a couple of these because you're going to hit me. I wrote that he's a chunk play machine. You're going to hit 30, 40 here, and that's going to make up for it.
And the Cal game comes to mind where he had some throws, and you thought he had never played football before, some of the things he was trying to do with the football and throwing across his body 30, 40 yards. One was an interception.
Yeah, that pick six like early in that one.
You're like, wait a second, are we watching the same game on the same planet? But I think that's where someone like Kevin Stefanski comes in. And it's funny, as an outside national media person, and you forget, the Browns won 11 games in 2023, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
And Kevin Stefanski was the coach of the year.
For the second time.
For the
second time.
I think he's so underrated because people just want to focus on the negative, and I understand all the storylines around that. But his ability to get the most out of that offense under sometimes trying circumstances. And my buddy Rick Spielman, who I used to work with and suddenly quit the podcast to go take a job with the Jets, whatever, he worked with Kevin in Minnesota, and he speaks incredibly highly of him. I was talking to my buddy last night who's in the league and said, he's one of the best offensive minds in the game, and I think you can't undersell that because, again, fit matters. Cliff Kingsbury worked with Jaden last year, and we saw the success they had. Sean Payton and Bo Nix, like I mentioned. And I think if you get a quarterback in there, a young quarterback who's interested and focused, like someone like Cam seems to be, that feels like a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, not to mention Kevin, but Tommy Reese, who was the OC that
Tommy
clearly
Reese
got more out of Jalen Milroe 2 years ago at Alabama than they were able to once he left.
Yeah, with Kalen DeBoer, who did what he did with Michael Penix Jr., and you were hoping to see more from Jalen Milroe. But I don't think that's the number 2 overall conversation, so we don't have to have that. But I think I sometimes lose sight of the fact, me personally, of how important – you can put players with teams, but the infrastructure has to be in place. And the Browns have some offensive line issues to sort out, some – wide receiver issues to sort out. But if you have a good base, and by that I mean a coach who can get the most out of his players, especially at quarterback, and you have someone like Cam who seems to be bought in and more confidence than you have to worry about, that seems like a good place to start if that's what you're going to do at number 2.
Talking to Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports NFL draft analyst. Get you out of here on this one because Nathan and I are proponent for 2 and more at quarterback. Take one at 2, take one in the third round too. Is there a guy, a mid-round guy that you like that jumps out at quarterback?
And I love that philosophy, by the way. We made fun of, of Washington when they did it with Kirk Cousins and RG3.
Just fine.
As many at-bats as possible.
Absolutely, because you don't have I say it, if you have 21 Hall of Famers and no quarterback, you're not winning playoff games. So absolutely.
Can we put you on the payroll? Like, that's all.
Nothing else matters.
We've been saying this for a month and a half.
Nothing else
Like,
matters.
that's it.
It's
Like,
not.
You don't have a quarterback. What are you doing?
A year ago, I was a big Spencer Rattler fan, and this year, Kyle McCord's my guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think he's probably day 2, day 3 fringe right now, but he had such a fantastic season. And you guys saw him, and you know the evolution this young man made. And me personally, I think it's the big fish to little pond transformation that allowed him. And we talked to him in the Shrine Bowl, and he said, I had a lot more confidence. I was throwing with anticipation. He had a fantastic season. And that final game against Cam, if you didn't know who was who, you wouldn't know who the best quarterback was because they went toe-to-toe. So I think he could be a day 2/day 3 option. I think he's going to have a good week.
He lied, but not because he knew I was going to do this. He was being honest. He was getting you out of here. But I'm saying, no, one more.
Yeah.
We are of the belief that this is a league in which you must score the football. You want to be competitive. You look at the teams who went to the playoffs, top 12 scoring teams all went to the playoffs last year. So we're in our minds, we're all on board. Quarterback, get a quarterback early. Let's go. Pick 33. The Browns have the first pick in the second round. This is a valuable pick. Who are some of your favorite weapons? And I'm going to use that word now. I used to be more, it has to be a receiver, but now with the way tight ends can be weapons and even the way we're seeing, running backs come up, and I'm reminded that we did get Nick Chubb around that spot back in 2018. Who would be some of your favorite weapons that could be available to the Cleveland Browns at pick 33?
Yeah, Omarion Hampton, the UNC running back, I love. He's
home run hitter.
Going to be a round 2-ish guy, it feels like. I don't know if he'll be here, but Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, he had a fantastic season. Houston transfer. He's a track guy. We'll see if he goes a little bit higher than that. But Jordan Addison was my comp for him, and Jordan Addison's he's pretty successful. Tight end wise, I like Gunnar Helm out of Texas. I don't know if that's a little too rich. Mason Taylor out of LSU.
What about when I watched Cam, I fell in love with that tight end.
Elijah Arroyo is also.
Is that too early for him?
He's going to be a day 2 guy, and teams like him a little bit more than I do. But I think he's a day 2 guy. Athletic, he looks the part. A little bit like the Njoku thing coming out. So,
how about Gibbe's guy from Gibbe went to Bowling Green?
Harold Fannin Jr. First of all, we talk about the smaller school guys playing against bigger competition. He crushed Texas A&M and Penn State.
And ran away from him.
And the greatest thing about Harold Fannin Jr., and I don't know what Jason feels about this, is it looks like he doesn't have knees. He runs weird, but he's fast. It's the weirdest thing. Like he
kind of moves like Gates a little bit.
He has
that weird way where it's like weird. It doesn't even look like he's moving, but he's moving.
It's like a Fred Flintstone run. His feet are moving, but he somehow he's a playmaker too. I think he's a day 2 guy, and we'll see how he tests because he's not an inline guy, so you're going to move him around, and that's okay if you understand that. But
absolutely,
I think Kevin Stefanski probably figured that out.
Yeah.
Ryan, can't thank you enough. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the conversation. Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports, joining us here at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Hey, Browns fans, this one's winner of the local business platform presented by Minutemen is Red Beard Seasonings. Red Beard Seasonings started as a hobby in a home kitchen. It has since blossomed into a collection of often original recipe flavors. Pepper sauce, steak, and brisket chips. I'd be interested in that, a steak and brisket chip. I'd be interested in that. Even some coffee. Check them out today. To learn more about the local business platform, visit browns.com/community/local business platform. Send us a box of that.
I like seasonings.
I'll season some things up, buddy. We'll get all of that done. We are broadcasting live over at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Around the League, presented by Leaf Filter, official gutter guard of your Cleveland Browns. A lot of teams have spoken already. One of the kind of things I know that there was something in here with the Falcons in terms of Cousins
that they're saying they're keeping him. He's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere
anytime soon.
Anytime soon. What percentage of things said at the Combine is believable?
Very little. Very little. I do like things like when Field Yates says in response to the Adam Schefter quote we said earlier that all future mocks will have the Browns taking quarterback too. That's what we were trying to tell you, Fields. Why does it take him? Why could we were saying it?
Field will join you Thursday.
For
Perfect.
50 days
Good.
We've been saying.
Tell me he's been on our bad list.
That's all we've been saying.
Stocking full of coal.
Is it? That's all we've been saying is quarterback.
This was from Atlanta, GM Terry Fontenot. The plan now is to pay Kirk Cousins his upcoming bonus and move forward with him on the team. Their head coach then addresses and said, Michael Penix Jr. is our starting quarterback.
So they want Cousins to mentor. That didn't go well last year.
Here's the thing, guys, and this is sometimes I think people don't look at things maybe the right way with Kirk Cousins. Now, he could say, hey, I don't want to do this, but this is a team that is a playoff team. Very few quarterbacks, as we all know, actually play the full season without missing any time. That just doesn't happen often, and Penix is a guy with an injury history. That's one of the reasons that he was as old as he was going into the draft, and he had bounced around.
Serious injuries, yeah, for sure.
So if you're the Atlanta Falcons, okay, here's what you can do. Your best case scenario this year, which would be a post-June 1st designation, is that you pay $40 million to Kirk Cousins this year.
Yep.
For him not to be on your team.
That's right.
That's your best case scenario. And by the way, there are no cap savings involved in that. None. If you were to cut him before June 1st, which you certainly wouldn't do, you're not only taking on $65 million in dead money, you're losing $25 million on the cap as well. So he's not getting cut pre-June 1st. The only hope that you have is he's cut post-June 1st, and then that allows them to, in the future, start to save some cap money. Nobody's going to trade for him because whoever trades for him is going to take on a huge number.
Yeah.
In terms of that money would then be their responsibility to the tune of $25 million this year. I bet their thinking is we basically get nothing. We're going to pay $40 million for nothing.
Yeah.
Or guess what? We can pay $40 million and he's still on our team.
Right.
There's $0 of cap benefit to cutting Kirk Cousins. The only world in which you would cut Kirk Cousins, and it would be a post-June 1st designation, is that you're saying to Kirk Cousins, we like you so much in the limited time you were here in Atlanta, and you're a good guy, we're going to give you an opportunity to go start somewhere else. For no reason themselves. If I'm going to pay $40 million for something, I want something.
Yeah, you do.
At least I have him here. He can mentor Penix. If Penix gets hurt, we feel like, okay, he can step in and play. All of those things, the reasons we gave him this big contract, which is why when we said at the time, if you go all in Kirk Cousins, why you drafted a quarterback in the first round? Or just draft a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
Don't do both. But if you're into $40 million, get something for it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just throwing it in the fireplace.
You hit on a really, I think the point of that's a playoff team. That's an operation that needs to win.
Totally.
And it's a heck of an insurance policy
the
that
best
you've already
in the league.
paid for.
You've already paid for it.
So what's the
Absolutely.
As long as he's a good human, and all indications are that he will be now that he knows the circumstances, and he handles it, then be a pro. That's it.
It's like basically saying, okay, I have paid for an unbelievable vacation, and then I'm like, I actually want to go do that. Just go on that vacation. You can go on the other vacation too.
Right.
But you paid for this one already. You're 40. There's no benefit.
Yeah.
They reap nothing. They get benefit in 26 and 27, but by the time they get there, it actually is a little bit easier to hopefully move on from Kirk Cousins if you're in their spot. But I don't see any reason. I would keep him if I was the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Vinny's in on it.
Of course he's in on it. He's down there. What's he sucking down some Chipotle over there? Everyone's sucking down some Chipotle. God bless. All right, The Voice. What are The Voice? He's our guy, Andrew Siciliano. All of the secrets are going to be told by Andrew next. That's what I'm told.
That's a great teaser.
That's all of the secrets.
Get your popcorn.
All of the secrets.
Get your popcorn like your boy Johnny Fanta.
Get him locked in.
He's on Pardon My Take this morning when I drove in.
Our great buddy Andrew Siciliano going to join us coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Your fandom with the Ballybet Sportsbook app. Download today and get $50 back in bonus bets. You place your first wager of $10 or more. Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. He's a radio play-by-play voice of your Cleveland Browns. He's Andrew Siciliano. He joins us live. I promised all of the secrets.
Oh, yeah.
What
are the secrets here?
I don't know. I want all the league secrets.
All of them.
What is your favorite, aha moment at the Combine in all the years you've came? Like, wait a second, that just happened? Oh, wait, he's available?
I'll give mine while you ponder it.
Yeah.
Bo Bishop passing Kyler Murray on the stairs and us having a very accurate assessment of his height.
Oh, yeah.
It was all we talked about.
He's
and
a tiny person.
When we came into it, everyone said, Kingsbury to get the most out of Rosen. We're here for 20 minutes. It's like, no, Kyler's going 1. Kime was dressed as Kingsbury.
Kime was in like a schmedium.
You know, and we're like, gosh, if we could get a physical.
And then right there, Harry and Izzy. You guys were on the same step, and right by Kyler. It was boom.
Moment.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know that I have a moment like that. I've had moments like that in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, where it's 2 in the morning and you have 2 head coaches screaming at each other in a bar.
I like that.
And
name names.
I'm not going to name names.
Can you name topics? What was the topic? What were they fighting
I
about?
don't even remember the topic, but it got heated. But it was also like you hugged it out and everyone laughed about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there had been many a Bud Light consumed over the long course of a Mobile evening, and that was like, oh boy. Whoa, okay.
That escalated.
That was fun. It was also funny. But you mentioned Kyler. That year here for the Combine, I did have an aha moment when I pieced everything together that Kyler's agent, Eric Burkhart, was college roommates with anybody? Anybody?
Was Cliff?
Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah,
and then there's Kyler, then there's this. And I was like, oh yeah, that's done. It's over.
On my drive here, one of my former interns was dating Cliff. And she said, he's taking Kyler.
Oh, yeah.
I promise you.
Yeah.
And I went, oh.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess maybe you do know. And then sure enough.
Turned out to be quite correct.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I've had one of those moments in a while. But you do. I mean, look, the Combine's great because especially after the nightly meetings, sometimes you get guys coming from those meetings and they meet with the prospects. Last night, D-line and linebackers and kickers. If anybody wanted a kicker meeting, it had to be last night.
Yeah.
And then guys head out to the bars and, hey, what'd you think of this guy? And it's not always what they say, it's what their face says. It's like,
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of
boy.
Oh, baby.
Oh, boy. Now, that doesn't mean that guy's off their board. As AB said to you earlier, there's 2 months to go here, and a lot of other voices can get into the conversation, and maybe a guy goes back on the board. But, yeah, every now and then there's have fun with him. So it's not going to be us, but somebody's going to have fun with him.
Somebody's going to get him.
Yeah.
Speaking of AB, he did the podium.
Yes.
He did a media scrum that you were a part of over there, and then he came here with us. What was kind of your big, if any, big takeaways from the full Andrew Berry talking experience?
I mean, I think the big headline obviously is Miles. He's standing firm, and we're not going to trade him. And people say, well, then what's it going to come to? I don't know. It's a long time between now and training camp if it gets that far. But look, the CBA really is on the team side, this CBA we're currently under, when it comes to holdouts. You can't really hold out these days. You hold in when you want a new contract. Jamar Chase is at camp, but he's not practicing. TJ Watt's at camp, but he's not practicing.
It's distracting.
You really don't hold out. And I'm not trying to call Miles bluff in any way, shape, or form, but is he going to miss game checks? And by the way, if he says yes, so be it. I mean, that's his stance. He wants to take it. I think we're a long way from there. I think logic dictates the Browns at one point, and NAB has certainly intimated this. You put a contract extension in front of him, it will likely, be the biggest for a defensive player. You'd have to assume, right, in the league, and go, really? Do you not want this contract here? And if he says no, I guess then, the conversation takes a turn. But until that happens, and by the way, maybe it already has. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
No,
we don't know that.
Don't know.
But, if that happens, I think then it's a different conversation. But, I pulled one GM aside today off the podium and said, hey, could you at least just tell me, have you called because it's one of the teams.
Yeah,
people say,
yeah.
well, maybe he would go
yeah.
there. Have you at least called? He's like, I don't want to come. I'm like, come on, man. He's like, did you call? I'm like, we all call.
Yeah,
like, we all
it doesn't hurt to
text,
call.
right?
Everybody calls.
You're doing your job. He's like,
Right.
I'm not going to come in on that.
So he
Okay.
called, and he
So
was
he called.
and he
Yeah,
was
of
rebuked.
course. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
was
that's the
rebuked.
way it works.
I
Yeah.
do think that that's going to end with Miles signing a big contract. My guess is he's going to want a lot of guaranteed money, given contracts that were handed out by our organization otherwise. And I think that hopefully that part will work out. Now, one thing that certainly has caught the attention of our fans, and it was kind of didn't come out on the podium. I think it came out with you guys, so you can maybe give more context to just the notion that not that it was nonchalantly said, but matter-of-factly said, Nick Chubb's going to hit free agency.
Yeah, it was in the scrum with the locals after he did the podium. Full disclosure, I was not very close to the front. It was a big scrum. I didn't hear it. It's on tape certainly, but it wasn't a long answer. And I believe the question from Scott was, do you expect Nick Chubb to hit free agency? And he said, well, his contract is up. So basically, yes, I expect him to hit free agency. So that's kind of the answer. We're not going to do a deal before. That's what I read between the lines. I think the headline will be, Browns don't want Nick Chubb back. That's not what he said at all. It was, yes, I do expect him to hit free agency. He also said conversations with his representatives will be had. He didn't give a lot of context on those conversations. It wasn't like we're going to talk to them and try to bring him back at a different number or anything like that. It was, yes, I expect him to hit free agency, but we're going to talk to him.
I think
there's a little nuance.
The hard part, I think, for the fans is Nick Chubb has said he wants to come back.
Sure.
So the idea that it hasn't happened, and it sounds like it will not happen until he tests the market, means that we are saying maybe on the bright side, we want you back, but we want you back here. You think you can get here, go see, and if not, then we can work it out.
That was not in any way said, and it was near the end of the scrum. There was, unfortunately, no follow-up.
Yeah.
It was really, and young Gabe over there is nodding his head. He actually, I couldn't even hear. I leaned into Gabe. I said, what exactly did he say? It was like a 15-second interaction.
Yeah, it was very quick.
It is one that I think we would all like to follow back up with and get a little more clarity. It wasn't, hey, Nick, see ya. That's not what he said.
No.
Yeah.
We were talking about the checklist for AB this offseason is long.
Yeah. It is.
He's busy.
There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, he's busy. It's us and kind of the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals have a lot, in both in the same division.
They at least have money and a quarterback.
They do. They have money and a quarterback, and you trade
well,
them. But at the
when you
same
say
time,
they have money, you mean
under
they have
the salary
space.
cap.
Under the salary cap, they have money.
That's a different conversation.
We have said, not that we want it to happen. We're not advocating for this
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. But they seem to me to be the absolute number one team that should line up, take a 10% interest in the private equity, and now all of a sudden they have cash and they can keep Burrow, Chase Higgins, build a defense, do all these things.
Sure.
But don't do it.
You would think that would be a good thing to do. The other thing, real quick, I thought from AB's podium that made some headlines is he said that they view Travis Hunter as a wide receiver first and not a corner first.
Second.
Now, he opened it by saying, is he a wide receiver or corner? The answer is yes. He's a unicorn. He could play both. But we primarily see him as a wide receiver. Some teams don't. A lot of teams see him as a corner. He's going to be here as a corner. He's got to be listed as something, but he's going to do drills on both sides.
Yeah, this is a heck of a way to start it.
It wasn't.
It's a bit of a banger, kids.
It wasn't boring.
On a Tuesday.
Yeah, we have Adam Schefter. I don't know if you've seen this in the.
He said he thinks he'll take a quarterback. I mean,
he said that's the thing he
screaming
feels
headline.
the most sure about in the draft.
We have all week to have this conversation. You two need to calm down on the you have to take a quarterback at
I
two.
will not.
Kindly leave.
Calm down.
Kindly leave.
No.
Kindly leave.
I would like to see them do that as well.
He has to operate from the standing microphone from now on until you earn your way back.
Here's all I want to get into your heads.
Okay.
Reasonable people can have an intellectual conversation about this. You two get so angry about it when the conversation is broached.
We are in the flames.
I understand.
All right? Like we are in a pressure cooker on a daily basis.
Have an intellectual
you got that
conversation
beach
about
view?
it.
We haven't seen the sun in 2 months,
I
buddy.
listen every day.
We are not rational
From the
people.
beach, dude. You're walking
Come on,
there,
you got
the
beach,
sun, you
you're
have
walking,
vitamin D, you're
vitamin
happy.
D. Look
We're
at
in
your
a
glow.
tundra,
We haven't
and the
seen
only thing that
anything.
can melt that ice is a quarterback.
I mean, it's going to go from frozen to slush. Like, come on, man.
Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is a quarterback at 2.
We'll do this tonight.
The next level is next.
We'll be back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.